everybody, Dana Litwin here again with more Tuesday tips for leaders of volunteers. This week, pretty hot topic. I've seen a lot of threads on social media, LinkedIn and Twitter about this recently, where how do we advocate for more resources within our departments and agencies overall? So that could mean getting another person hired in your team, a part-time or full-time staff member to support your work. It could be getting vehicles. It could be getting budget items for other resources that support outreach and community engagement and volunteer engagement, whatever that might be. There's really three ways to make the case, three things to think about. And this is how it's done in the corporate world, the business world, as well. So I think these are pretty universal tips no matter what sector you are in. So you want to, whoever you're talking to, know your audience. I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but are you talking to the board? Are you talking to a chief operations officer? Are you talking to a finance officer? Are you talking to your executive director? Are you talking to your immediate supervisor? So what is that person's learning or communication style? And that will shape how you share your case, your data, and how you have that conversation. But no matter what, when you're advocating for more resources, you do want this to be supported by facts and numbers and stories or anecdotes from the community of the impact that volunteer services is already having in a positive way and how it can improve and get even better going into the future. We also want to be really honest with where are the shortfalls, and can more budget or more resources being allocated to volunteer services or community engagement solve those problems. So you want to not just come in saying, hey, I generally need more money and that would be great, and it's always great to get a raise or get more hired staff or another van. But we want to say, if we get this kind of resource, we'll get this kind of result, and that will either backfill or make whole. There's a kind of corporate phrases for asking for resources is right sizing, backfill if you've lost staff positions or volunteer roles or other resources in the past couple of years of the pandemic. A lot of agencies cut budgetary things and cut positions, and now they're scrambling 2-3 years later to kind of backfill or right size, make whole those departments. That's a good place to start from if you've really been struggling with having too much on your plate or more than your team can handle. So if you've been just kind of barely treading water or even falling behind, that we don't just want to paint a positive picture, but we want to say with these resources, we can then accomplish this in our mission impact going forward. So the three ways to think about presenting the case is what used to be so, what has changed now, and what can be done to guarantee sustainability and success in the future. So before, now, and future times, and tying all of that into the strategic plan, if your agency has one, tying into the strategic plan, into core mission impact goals, that's going to help your case as well. So one example is there's one manager of volunteer services and there's one 20-hour-a-week part-time volunteer coordinator, and that's been okay for, say, 10 years before the pandemic, and you were doing fine with that, and everyone got used to that. But things are really different now. There's a shortage of labor in general because of the pandemic. There's a shortage of a downward trend in volunteering in certain areas or shifting priorities for people. So how can you address the current situation and solve for any shortages or under-resourcing or just barely treading water or not quite hitting goals by, again, right-sizing and making whole your department and your resources to be successful in what the current situation is. So letting go of how things used to be, not trying to go back to how things used to be, but what's your reality right now, the good, the bad, the ugly, the neutral, but what are the facts and the data that you are working with right now that make the case for making your part-time volunteer coordinator full-time and raising their salary. Then for the future vision, not only catching up to or adjusting to a new workload in the data that you have, but where do you want to go? What are the ambitions and the vision and the goal of the agency? Are they doing a new strategic plan? Can you be part of that conversation? Can you at least try to be at the table if changes or reorganization is happening? So that's part of some other videos I've talked about with managing up and return on investment of volunteer resources. I'll link that video at the end of this one, but look through kind of May metrics for data visualization and a few other videos that I have on my Tuesday Tips playlist here for additional information. But here's how you shape that conversation. You should have enough data with your volunteer management software system to get a good snapshot, to get a good picture of this is how we were doing things and this is how we handled this workload. Directly compare it, chart, graph, storytelling, however you want to present it to the audience to be persuasive for who needs to make the decision. But then compare it to, but now this is the workload. The workload and the people that we're serving in the community have increased 56%, and our staffing, our paid employees have stayed the same, or the volunteer roles have not expanded to meet that demand. Or you need a new vehicle or some other physical item to add to your department to help achieve your goals. So having that side-by-side data comparison of this was the workload, this is the percentage that the workload or demand for services is increased, and then attaching that to a positive vision in the future of and here's what we can accomplish, not just to right size and catch up with where we need to be now, but if we invest these resources, these specific things that I'm asking for in next year's budget or to have budgeted right now, this is what we can accomplish by this milestone date, by this point in the strategic plan that we wanted to reach in 5 years. We're never going to reach it unless we resource these things today. So helping to draw out that timeline and tell that story, it's data driven, it's supported by voices from the community, and it's how you're going to make the case to the bean counters. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be an easy conversation. I'm not saying it's even going to be a successful conversation, but if you don't ask, you don't get. If you're just hoping that someone up top who makes decisions, if you're not the decision maker, is going to just passively notice what you're doing, that's not going to work. It's up to us. Part of our roles as leaders of volunteers and working in these departments or running these departments is educating up, is managing up and educating the board, the executive director, other directors of other departments, the value of what we are doing with volunteer activities and how that is affecting mission impact. Don't be afraid to talk about negative impacts. These are just the facts on the ground. The pandemic has drastically impacted, again, labor overall and volunteer trends of what priorities people are shifting to, how their values are shifting, how they use their time is changing, and that, quite frankly, millions of people in each country and around the world simply can't do the work that they could do 3 or 4 years ago because of effects of the pandemic. So don't be afraid to have, some cold, hard facts and evidence of this is where we are now, and it may not be great, but if we get these resources, not only can we catch up, but we can also prepare ourselves and be a sustainable program that really serves the whole of the community going forward in the future, that aligns with these goals of the agency. So I hope that you get everything you need by asking for it and making the case with data. And again, check out these other videos that I mentioned on the channel as other little resources or ways to help you put that together. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Dana@danalitwin.com is my email, and you can find me all over the social media channels as well. And I'm happy to have a conversation or work directly with your agency on solving some of these problems and helping you make the case to get the resources that you need to do your job serving the community. So I hope you enjoy these Tuesday tips, and we'll see you next time.